Good evening and welcome to this month's episode of the U.S. Embassy Insider. My name is Molly Koshina and I'm the press attaché here at the U.S. Embassy in the Philippines. This evening I'm joined by one very special guest who is also a colleague and a friend, works for the United States Agency for International Development, also called USAID, which is actually easier to say. Chris, thank you for joining us.
Hi, Molly. Thanks for having me.
It's a real pleasure.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So, Chris, what is your role at USAID?
So I am a program officer. And a program officer at USAID, we have kind of the cool job of getting to see how everything works. A lot of my colleagues are specialists in one area, environment or health. I get to look at how everything fits together. In the program office, we look at things like how do we design our projects and our activities. We get to think about things like where should we be funding different types of activities. So it's really sort of a big picture view of everything going on in USAID.
And is it only in the Philippines or regional?
No, we here out of Manila, we cover the Philippines, we cover 12 Pacific Islands, and we cover Mongolia. So we have sort of a large territory to look after.
Okay, and how long have you been here in the Philippines?
We've been here in the Philippines now for just a little over 2 years,
Okay.
And are really, really enjoying it.
What's your favorite thing about the Philippines?
My favorite thing about the Philippines, I'd have to say, one of the things that I've really enjoyed is trying the local foods. One of which is balut.
No.
It is, and I love watching other people, particularly other Americans, try it for the first time.
Ooh, that sounds not very fair.
No, it's fantastic, right? Now that I can do it and I can eat it, and it's I enjoy it. I like introducing my friends and colleagues to, hey, you should try this, and then watching them eat it. That's the sort of face that I love watching when they try it.
Okay, favorite travel destination in the Philippines?
I'd have to say we have really enjoyed traveling here. There are so many cool places. Bohol was probably one of the coolest that we went. I think it had a little bit of everything. It had the beach and the sun. It had the chocolate hills. It had the tarsiers. So a little bit of everything. Everybody in the family got something that they were looking for.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was cool.
So tonight we're going to talk about Marawi.
Great.
And USAID efforts to help rehabilitate, right? The devastation after the siege is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Our ambassador recently was in Marawi,
Right.
visited the most affected area, visited a school that receives books and
That was cool.
support from USAID, and he announced a new program.
Right. So we just launched a new $25 million 3-year program, our Marawi Response Program, that is going to focus on the needs of people that have been displaced by the crisis in Marawi, we call IDPs, internally displaced persons. So we're going to look at a program over the next 3 years to try and help those folks that have been displaced get their lives back together. The program.
How? How do you?
Yeah.
Because they're not able to go back to their homes yet.
Right. And that's one of the things we were looking at. We were really concerned about those folks that have left their homes and particularly aren't going to be able to come home, at least for the foreseeable future.
Right.
So what we need to do is we want to work with the local communities to help them restart their lives. So that could be providing small grants to get businesses and livelihoods back up and running. That could be providing youth and women with training opportunities. Could also be in the longer term and over the course of 3 years, trying to make that business environment better to attract business, to get livelihoods and to get work.
To help the economy,
exactly.
to help the stability.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Right. At the same time, we're also concerned with what's going on in those communities. It wasn't just the folks that lost their homes that suffered from this. A lot of the folks in the communities outside of Marawi was where they worked. Marawi was where they had their businesses. So they lost their incomes, they lost their livelihoods, and then they had a number of people come into their communities. That puts a lot of stresses on the communities, the stresses on the families that have moved out, as well as those families that are hosting those communities. Stresses on the communities that had evacuation centers in them. So what we want to do is we want to look at helping to build back up community cohesion in those communities outside of Marawi.
I guess you don't often think about the people commuting into the city, or the people who are receiving family members or friends who can no longer go home.
Absolutely.
So the ripple effect, right?
Yeah, and so even when you hear the numbers of the people that were displaced, really oftentimes what that leaves out are those communities and those people in the community. So really the effects of Marawi, as you say, ripple way beyond just the city itself.
Now you mentioned two particular groups who you would focus on, youth and women. Why those particular populations?
I think that we're looking at youth and
I
women.
mean, I am a young woman, so.
You are a young woman. You are a young woman. Yes. So I think when we talk about youth, I think that's a demographic that I think is really important. We have to make sure that youth have something to do.
Sure.
Right. We know that there's a lot of money down in Marawi floating around. We know that there are folks down in Marawi that would like to recruit folks to do activities that perhaps wouldn't be things that we might be interested in supporting.
Right.
So, we want to make sure that youth have something to do. We want to make sure that youth feel a sense of community, feel a sense of belonging in those communities so that they have something productive to do. I think women are another really, really important demographic. Women run the world, right? I mean, let's be honest here. Women and mothers really sort of run families, right? And so we have to make sure that they have the support to run the families, to run the communities, to get out and work, to have every single opportunity that we can provide for them.
I've read a study saying that if women are involved in, for example, a peace process, that it is 3 times more likely to, I'm not sure what the data is, but something along those lines. So I have read that there is data supporting that when you have women's involvement in rebuilding a community or in looking for solutions, that it has more sticking power and it's more successful.
Absolutely.
And perhaps that's
absolutely. Women are at least half the population. They have to be included in any sort of solution or any sort of programs that we're running. So yeah, absolutely. For success of our programs, women have to be involved, and they have to have leadership opportunities as well.
Interesting. You mentioned community cohesion for the new communities. How does that work? How do you create a more cohesive community?
I think in many cases, really what you do is you set the table and communities create it themselves. But you provide those opportunities for them to do so. Right. What you want to do is facilitate those opportunities for the communities to do so. That could be anything from providing small grants for communities to identify peace building programs in their communities. That could be facilitating conversations between communities and LGUs. That could be helping to facilitate LGU interaction with the communities to address the needs that the communities have. So really, it's a lot of being in the communities, listening to what the communities are saying they want, what they need, and setting the table for that cohesion to happen.
So how do you achieve these objectives? You have the money and you have a situation in Marawi, but how does it happen? What are the mechanics behind it?
Sure. So we have what we call implementing partners. Okay. So our implementing partner for this project is an organization called PLAN. They have experience working down in that area. Soon after the crisis down there, they were doing some emergency response work with us as well. So we work with them, and we designed a program together. And PLAN will be actually on the ground carrying that out.
So the money doesn't go to local government units?
No. The money from USAID, we fund our partner, and our partner then implements the project on the ground. Okay,
and so it doesn't go to the people either?
If there are small micro grants, it would go to those people, but that would be our partner working with the people. Saying, okay, who has ideas that we can fund? What are those ideas? How do we follow up to know that those ideas are being implemented? How do we know that the money that we're giving is going for what its intended purpose was?
I think that's an important point.
It is. It's a very important point. I think any type of project like this, particularly when you're giving small and micro grants, you really have to be watching where that money goes. You have to be ensuring that when we give this money to restart a small business, it's going to restart that small business.
Absolutely, absolutely. But accountability is difficult, especially if we're so far.
It always is difficult, but we do have ways that we go down to monitor and see what's going on. We have a third-party monitoring project that can get into communities and do that. When we're able to, we go down and we work and go to the communities to see those. So we have ways that we can go down and see that to make sure that the project is being implemented as it was designed to be implemented.
And there must be requirements, reporting requirements,
absolutely.
Legal requirements.
Absolutely,
you have to fulfill those.
For sure.
Can you tell me how the plan was designed?
Yeah, it was. When we saw what was going on, we knew right away that there was going to be a lot of attention on Marawi City itself. Rightfully so, absolutely. Right. Our concern was what happens to all those people that are outside of Marawi City. And we thought early on that it's going to take quite a while to get the reconstruction of Marawi up and running. And so people would be out for a while. So we had a number of meetings, consultations with folks from the region. We talked with officials from the barangay level, officials from municipality level, officials from the provincial level. We talked to a number of people that lived down in the area. So we talked to see, what are the needs? What are the needs in your community? What are you seeing? What's happening on the ground there? What are ways that we can help? What are those things that need to be attended to right now? So it was a consultative process that we did to get where we are today.
Locals, with people
absolutely.
from the people who were affected.
Yes.
Were you involved in that?
I was.
Can
Yes.
you tell me what did it feel like? What was your impression of having those engagements?
It's always difficult, particularly in a situation or a crisis situation, when you're listening to the stories. They are oftentimes heart-wrenching stories, but yet they're stories that they really demonstrate such resilience of the people. And I think that's one of the things that I took away from it was, you hear some of the stories of folks that went to work that morning and they, when the fighting broke out, they thought, oh, I'll be out for just a little while. It was 3 months, 4 months, 5 months later, they were still away from their homes. But the resilience that they showed, it really is it's impressive too.
Inspirational.
Absolutely.
So USAID does other work.
We do.
In Mindanao. Can you tell me a little bit about just highlights, maybe?
Sure. So we've been in the Philippines for about 50 years.
Okay.
And we've been in Mindanao for much of that time. So we've got a really sort of deep record in Mindanao. In fact, when the fighting broke out, we had a number of programs that were already operating in and around the area that we were able to immediately turn to help the situation in Mindanao.
Interesting.
Yeah, we had a health program, for example, our Mindanao health program, that off the bat was able to get into some of the evacuation centers and helped about 12,000 people make sure that they had clean water.
Oh, wow.
Water containers, chlorine
Sure.
tabs to purify water. We had our electric, right after the fighting, we had a program that was working with power and energy. They've been there since the end. I think they've put up about 175 solar street lamps in Sangansongan, the temporary shelter site.
Sure. How
So we've had a
interesting.
number of activities going on. I think through the years in Mindanao, for example, the General Santos Airport, I think we had a hand in helping out with that.
Really?
And so all throughout Mindanao for
Many
many
years.
years. Yeah. We've been there and we'll continue to be there.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's fascinating to have the ability to reprogram.
Well, that's just
Quick
the
response.
Yeah, to have that quick response. But it's because we were on the ground already. That we were already doing a lot of work at the local level.
Sure. One question that we get from our Facebook fans is why the U.S. government does programs like this.
Sure. I think we have a really deep, a shared cultural affinity between these two countries, right? When
Absolutely.
I think of how many Filipinos travel back and forth the
Yep.
United States, I think there's over 4 million dual citizens, dual citizen American Filipinos. Filipinos studying at American universities, Filipinos traveling throughout the United States, Americans coming to the Philippines traveling. We have, well over a 250,000 Americans, I believe, living here
Yeah.
in the Philippines. So I think there's that shared history, there's the shared cultural affinity, those cultural ties. I think, Americans like Filipinos, we want to see things get better, right?
Yeah.
We want to see things be good for our families. We want to see we want to see the next generation have it better than we did. So I think all of those sorts of things. As I said, we've been here. We have these deep ties with the Philippines, this partnership, this friendship
Yeah.
that has gone throughout the years and continues these days. So I think that has a lot to do with what we're doing here.
Absolutely. And what, having met with the folks from Marawi at all the different governmental levels, what do you think that the Marawi Response Project in particular means for the Filipino people?
Well, I hope it demonstrates really our commitment to the Philippines. I hope it shows that it demonstrates our friendship to the Philippines and the Philippine people. I think we really care about what's going on. We really care about the welfare of the folks who are affected by this. So,
Sure.
that's what I would hope that many would see this program as.
Chris, we are out of time this evening, but I really, really appreciate you sharing your insights, information about the program, and your experiences with us. I'm sure that our Facebook fans also have enjoyed it very much. Of course, the Marawi Response Project is important. It's ongoing. You said it's 3 years?
3 years.
And so we look forward to hearing more about the successes of the
Absolutely.
project in the future.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Facebook fans, thanks for joining us this evening. Be sure to follow us on Twitter, on Instagram, and of course here on Facebook for updates, programs, and information about what the United States Embassy in the Philippines is doing. And also always for more information, send us notes in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Chris, thanks for joining us.
It has been my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
And hey, I think you've been studying
Oh,
Tagalog,
boy.
haven't you?
Well,
Do you think that
little
you
bit.
could, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next month. And,
Magandang gabi sa inyong lahat.
good
How
job.
about that, right? Yeah.
Thank you all. We'll see you next time.
Thanks.